For over 2 decades, the world has tried to make sense of the tragic events of September 11th, 2001. But just when we think we know everything, new evidence surfaces, videos, sketches, and testimonies that force us to rethink history. Today, we're counting down the top 10 recently surfaced 9/11's evidence that changes everything. And trust me, what was captured near the Capitol will leave you speechless. Number 10, the sketch of the fourth plane. Recently uncovered in the 9/11's Commission archives, an anonymous sketch of United Airlines Flight 93 shows the plane descending, smoke trailing from its fuselage, found among a box of personal effects labeled Flight 93 artifacts. This crude yet haunting drawing immediately drew attention from investigators. Unlike photographs or videos, sketches carry an emotional fingerprint, and experts believe this one was drawn rapidly, possibly within minutes of the event. No signature, no accompanying explanation. Was it created by a survivor on the ground who witnessed the crash? Or could it have been drawn earlier, by someone who somehow knew what was about to unfold? The eerie timing of its discovery, buried for years among overlooked evidence, raises chilling possibilities about how much was seen, known, and perhaps even kept from public view during those chaotic hours. Number 9, newly released footage of the Capitol. A never-before-seen amateur video recently surfaced, capturing the atmosphere around the U.S. Capitol on the morning of September 11, 2001, shot from a handheld camcorder. The footage shows frantic scenes, staffers sprinting across the lawn, security forces scrambling to establish barricades, and members of Congress being rushed into secure locations. In the background, distant sirens scream as conflicting reports flood the crowd, some warning of additional hijacked planes inbound, others spreading pure chaos. What's most striking is the visible confusion among government officials themselves, many seemingly unsure of where the threats were coming from or how to respond. Despite the Capitol never being directly attacked, this raw, unfiltered footage captures a side of 9/11's rarely seen, a government caught off guard, reacting in real time, with fear and uncertainty written on every face. The release of this tape raises new questions. Were there secondary targets initially planned? Is the Capitol closer to disaster than we ever realized? Number 8, eyewitness audio recordings among the recently declassified materials. Audio recordings from civilians and emergency workers on the ground provide a chilling, first-hand account of the confusion that gripped New York City in the hours after the attacks. Some of these recordings, made by individuals who had no idea what was truly unfolding, reveal the frantic tone of voices trying to make sense of the situation. One recording captures a woman near the World Trade Center saying, "There's a second plane, ... It's coming towards us." Long before the news outlets could confirm that a second plane had hit the South Tower, other tapes from emergency responders reveal frantic orders being given as they navigate the chaos. Unable to fully comprehend the magnitude of the disaster as it unfolds, these tapes not only offer a rare, raw perspective on the day, but also hint at a level of uncertainty among the people directly involved. Were the attacks as unexpected as we've been led to believe? Or was there a deeper awareness of potential threats that only became apparent as the morning progressed? The most haunting part? Some of these recordings were made mere seconds before the collapse of the towers, capturing the final frantic moments of people trapped within, with no escape in sight. Number 7, FBI documents on uninvestigated leads. Among the newly declassified FBI documents, a startling number of tips and sightings were revealed, suggesting that several leads linked to the 9/11 attacks were never fully investigated. These leads, some involving foreign nationals and others pointing to unusual behavior in the days leading up to the attacks, were either dismissed or left unexplored entirely. One document, now made public, highlights a suspicious meeting between 2 individuals in Florida just weeks before 9/11's. The report noted that the individuals had contacted several known associates with terrorist ties. But despite clear warnings, the investigation was abruptly closed with no follow-up action. Even more chilling are the numerous reports of individuals who exhibited odd behaviors, such as scouting locations or making travel arrangements under suspicious circumstances. One lead describes a person in New Jersey who was allegedly seen filming the World Trade Center days before the attacks, a detail that never made it into the mainstream investigation. What makes this even more unsettling is the fact that these documents were marked for further investigation. Yet years later, they remain largely ignored or dismissed by official narratives. Who were these individuals, and why were their potential links to the attacks overlooked? The FBI's failure to explore these leads thoroughly raises troubling questions. What was missed in the days leading up to 9/11? How much more do we still not know? #6. Pentagon security camera footage. A new angle from a Pentagon security camera has recently emerged, offering a sharper, more detailed glimpse of the moment when American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the building. This previously unreleased footage, obtained under the Freedom of Information Act, shows a much clearer image of the plane's final moments, but also raises new questions. In the footage, we can see the plane coming into view much sooner than previous recordings had suggested. The trajectory of the aircraft seems to suggest that it was on an extremely low and fast descent, very little time for impact analysis. The explosion that follows is more intense than earlier grainy images had captured, sending shockwaves through the nearby area. However, the most striking part of this new footage is the blurred, almost frantic movements of the camera just moments before the crash. Some analysts believe this motion hints that there was an attempt to track the plane earlier than previously acknowledged, possibly suggesting a more advanced response protocol in place that was either too slow or too compromised. What's even more curious is that, despite the Pentagon's extensive security camera network, only a handful of frames have ever been released to the public. Why? Were the remaining tapes deliberately withheld to keep certain details hidden? With this new footage, the question arises: was there more time to respond than we were led to believe? Or was the attack truly as sudden and devastating as the official reports suggest? #5. The Capitol evacuation timeline discrepancy. In the aftermath of 9/11, government logs and official records revealed discrepancies between the official timeline of the Capitol evacuation and the testimonies of security personnel and staff members who were present that morning. According to the timeline, the Capitol was evacuated immediately following the second plane's impact on the South Tower, around 9:03 a.m. However, eyewitnesses claimed they were already in lockdown, with some even reporting that key government personnel were moved to secure locations well before the official word came through. One particularly troubling detail found in newly released documents indicates that Capitol Hill security had already initiated evacuation procedures based on intelligence warnings about potential targets. Yet this crucial information wasn't included in the official reports until years later, leaving many to question whether the government was more aware of the risks than it publicly admitted. Even more mysterious is the fact that many of the staff members closest to the political decision-makers were moved with almost no explanation or warning. Some report being told that the evacuation was part of a routine drill, only to learn much later that the threat was very real. Why were there such inconsistencies in the evacuation protocols? Were officials acting on prior knowledge of potential attacks, or were these responses simply reactive and disorganized? The questions raised by these discrepancies cast a shadow on the official narrative, suggesting there may have been more coordination behind the scenes than previously acknowledged. #4. New interviews with first responders. For years, the stories of firefighters, paramedics, and police officers who rushed into the Twin Towers on 9/11 remained largely untold, or at least not in full. But in recent interviews, many first responders have begun to speak out, offering fresh and startling insights into what they witnessed. These new accounts paint a picture far more chaotic, surreal, and unsettling than the official narratives. Several firefighters, some speaking publicly for the first time, describe hearing multiple secondary explosions within the towers. While initial reports suggested the towers collapsed due to the impact of the planes and subsequent fires, many first responders insist they heard explosions long before the buildings gave way. These explosions were described as deafening and unlike anything seen in typical structural failures. One particularly haunting account comes from a paramedic who, after entering the North Tower, found himself caught in a series of sudden tremors. It felt like the ground itself was shaking, he recalled. I was a few floors up when the building began to give way. It was as if the structure was crumbling from the inside out. These testimonies challenged the official explanation of a single fire-induced collapse and raised questions about what might have caused these additional, unexplained events. Were they triggered by hidden explosives, or is there another explanation that has been overlooked? In the years since, Some of these first responders have expressed frustration over the lack of follow-up investigations into the sounds of explosions and the unexplained behavior of the towers as they collapsed. The deeper we go into these interviews, the more unsettling the questions become. Number 3. Satellite images from September 11th for years. Many of us believe that the full scope of the obstruction on 9/11 was only captured through the lens of reporters and photographers on the ground. But recently declassified satellite images from that very day reveal an even more haunting perspective, one that was never seen by the public until now. These higher resolution images, captured by government satellites orbiting above New York City, show massive dust plumes spreading across Manhattan immediately after the Twin Towers fell. What's most eerie about these images is the pattern of the dust clouds, not just the typical fallout from building collapses, but irregular dispersals that some experts believe could indicate explosions or intense heat waves traveling through the surrounding area. One particular set of satellite images shows the Twin Towers disintegrating almost simultaneously, followed by an explosive eruption of debris. The plumes are so large and widespread that they appear to engulf not just lower Manhattan, but they seem to push outward into areas that should have been protected by other buildings. This suggests that the collapse could have been far more violent and possibly more controlled than what we were led to believe. Additionally, satellite footage taken just after the attacks shows strange heat signatures that seem to emanate from deep beneath the rubble. These heat sources remained present for weeks, suggesting that the fires were far more intense and widespread than initial reports indicated. As we study these images further, questions about the sequence and nature of the collapses come to the forefront. Did the buildings fall solely due to the impact and fire? Was something more sinister at play? These satellite images may hold the answers we've been waiting for, but they also raise far more disturbing questions than we were prepared to confront. Number 2. The lost black box recordings. Among the most valuable pieces of evidence from any plane crash are the cockpit voice recorders, the so-called black boxes, which capture the final conversations between pilots and crew members. For years, the black boxes from Flights 11 and 175, the planes that crashed into the World Trade Center, were believed to be irretrievably damaged or lost. But recently, leaks have surfaced suggesting that fragments of these recordings were analyzed by private investigators. One report, obtained through a FOIA request, details a conversation from the cockpit of Flight 11 moments before impact. While only fragments of the audio are available, the voices on the recording are unmistakably clear. The pilots seem confused, and there is a brief exchange in which they seem to react to something occurring outside the aircraft. This has led experts to speculate that, unlike the official narrative that states the hijackers were in complete control, there may have been a struggle in the cockpit, or even an attempt by the flight crew to retake control. The most unsettling revelation, however, comes from the analysis of the black box from Flight 175. Some reports suggest that the cockpit voice recorder may have captured a chilling, final conversation between the hijackers. Discussing the final approach to the South Tower, this conversation was allegedly interrupted by a loud bang. Potentially the moment the hijacker took full control. Could this have been a sign that something more planned, more methodical, occurred within the cockpit than previously understood? Despite the official position that these black boxes were too damaged to yield valuable information, some investigators believe they hold critical details about what really happened in those final minutes, why the planes were unable to be intercepted in time. These new fragments of recordings, if verified, could reshape our understanding of the hijackers' plan, the struggles that took place in the cockpits, and the failure of the response systems that allowed the attacks to unfold as they did. Number 1. Mysterious visitors to Capitol Hill. One of the most baffling and unsettling discoveries in the wake of 9/11 revolves around the mysterious visitors to Capitol Hill in the days leading up to the attacks. Newly uncovered security logs reveal a series of unregistered and highly unusual visitors who gained access to sensitive areas of the Capitol building just before and on the morning of September 11th. While some of these individuals were later identified as foreign nationals, others remain completely unknown, and their connections to the attacks remain unclear. One particularly strange entry in the logs describes a group of individuals who were seen conducting what appeared to be suspicious reconnaissance around key government buildings, including the Capitol itself. They were spotted entering restricted areas without proper identification, and made several inquiries about the security systems in place. Even more alarming, these individuals were never formally questioned or detained. These anomalous visitors were not the only ones to raise suspicion. Several reports from the time suggest that there were odd behaviors by staffers and personnel in the Capitol, including unusually high traffic near critical offices and secure rooms. Were these signs of intelligence gathering? Or could these visitors have been operating under false pretenses to test the Capitol's security measures ahead of the attacks? What's most troubling is that, despite the unusual nature of these visits, no further investigation into their activities appears to have been conducted, at least not until recently. The identities of these visitors remain a tightly guarded secret, and many of the security logs from that time are still classified. As new documents surface, the questions multiply. Who were these individuals, and why were they allowed to roam freely through the heart of the U.S. government just before one of the most devastating attacks in American history? Could they have had knowledge of the 9/11's plot in advance? Or were they part of a broader, more covert operation? The revelation of these visitors to Capitol Hill casts a shadow over the official narrative of the attacks, suggesting that there may be far more to the story of 9/11 than we were ever told. These questions remain unanswered, leaving us with one of the most chilling mysteries of the entire tragedy. Each piece of new evidence doesn't just add more information, it adds more questions. As history continues to unfold, one thing is clear: the story of 9/11 isn't as complete as we once thought. Which of these revelations shocked you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries.